The three most important considerations when it comes to data center and network rack maintenance are cable management, and cable management. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a product called PATCHBOX that aims to sort out all of your cable management needs. Hey everybody, my name's Chris with Crosstalk Solutions. If this is your first time here, make sure you click that subscribe button down below and follow us on Twitter for all of the latest updates. The PATCHBOX. Okay, so this is a product that I heard about a few months ago, and I contacted PATCHBOX and they were nice enough to send me one to try out because I am right now in the process of building a second network rack for my home office here. Now, this is really overkill for my little home office network rack, but in terms of data center administration, network rack administration, this thing is really, really valuable in terms of time saving, in terms of just keeping everything nice and clean, especially when you need to rewire things in a hurry. This is going to help you quite a bit. Now, don't let the size of this box fool you. Let's go ahead and open this up and get the PATCHBOX out of here. So as much of a large box as this is, there's really not all that much inside of it. We have some labels that can go onto the PATCHBOX itself. Then we have the PATCHBOX frame, as well as some extra screws and cable management accessories. Okay. I should mention too, that while I do have one PATCHBOX for myself that I'm going to use in my new network rack, PATCHBOX also sent me a second one to use as a giveaway item for one of you lucky subscribers out there. So make sure you're subscribed and follow the channel for all the latest updates. You can see when you'll have a chance to win your very own PATCHBOX cable management solution. So look at this. Doesn't look like much, right? But this is just the shell. So the way that this works is this is fully customizable. You have 24 separate slots in this PATCHBOX case here. And within each slot, you can have various cassettes. So this cassette right here is the Cat6A unshielded twisted pair cassette. Now you can have all sorts of different configurations. You can do all Cat6A, unshielded twisted pair, shielded twisted pair. You can do fiber cassettes. You can fully customize how you want to populate out your PATCHBOX. The one that I have here that is sort of this length is called the PATCHBOX 365, and it's the shorter version. They also have one called the PATCHBOX Plus, which is a longer version made to get these cables to stretch all the way up and down a standard 42U rack. This one is about sort of half that size because for my rack, which is 15U, the cables don't need to go all that far up and down. So essentially the way that this works is this is a patch from this one down to this one here. So you pull out this little clip right here, and now you can extend these wherever they need to go. And so they extend and retract. Once you have them to the length that you like, you can then lock them in place, and now you have a really simple and seamless cable management solution. Now these cassettes, again, fully customizable, but essentially they just slip right in here like so, and they lock into place. So you can see they sort of stick out the back here. The Plus version is going to stick out a little bit further. It's made for a deeper rack. This is made for like a standard network equipment rack that's not too deep like the one that I have sitting right over here. Now notice these are blue cables as well. You can also pick the color of cables that go in your cassettes. And I really mean this. You can literally customize this entire thing to however you need it. The way that I customized it was blue cables across the board, and I did 20 of the Cat6A cables, and then 4 of the OM4 multi-mode LC to LC fiber cassettes. Let's go ahead and open up one of the fiber cassettes next to take a look at that. So here we have one now, and again, don't let the size of the box fool you, because I think they use the same box for the 365 and the Plus version. When you actually look in here, there's a lot of empty space, right? So the cassette is just right back here. Let's go ahead and pull that out. And here we can see LC to LC fiber connectors. And they're gonna pull out just the same way that our Cat6 cables did. And we're gonna put the fiber cassettes over here on this side of the rack. So I'm gonna go ahead and populate all of these with the cassettes that are in these boxes right here. And then we have to figure out exactly where I'm going to place this in my 15U rack. All right, so there we go. Nope, that is upside down. I guess it doesn't matter, there is no upside down, but this is how I'm gonna have it in the rack. So we have our 20 Cat6A patch cassettes, and then our 4 OM4 multi-mode LC to LC fiber cassettes over here. So now let's take a look at the PATCHBOX rack planner to help us figure out where we're gonna get this thing situated in my 15U rack. Before we get into the rack planner, let's talk about the pricing for the PATCHBOX equipment. They sell through distributors. PATCHBOX is a company based out of Austria, and they only really have one US distributor. So here in the US, this is the only place where I could find pricing for these items, this Synergy Micro Solutions. So if we scroll down, we can see some of the pricing. And as I mentioned, they have two different models. They have the PATCHBOX Plus, and they have the PATCHBOX 365. The 365 is the shorter depth one that's made for smaller cabinets like the one that I'm installing my PATCHBOX into. So the PATCHBOX 365, fully populated with Cat6A cassettes, is $540. Or if you're gonna piecemeal it, you can basically buy the PATCHBOX frame, and then you can buy the 365 cassettes, $17 per Cat6A cassette, and $20.50 per fiber optic cassette. Of course, then you can just do the math based on what exact custom configuration you want. Another cool product that they have here is the setup.exe. Essentially, this is an ARM that you put in just below the rack unit where you're installing a server, and it essentially functions as a temporary shelf. Man, I wish I had this thing when I was doing network administration all the time, because oftentimes you're trying to put a big heavy server into a rack and you have to like kind of balance it and hold it in one hand and get it in the rack and then sort of try to screw it in without dropping it. Yeah, this would have been really cool to have this setup.exe mounting arm as part of those installs. Patchbox.com is where you can find out more information about the PATCHBOX itself. As part of Patchbox.com, they have this rack planner right here. And here is the rack plan that I came up with so far for my 15U rack. So right here you input how many rack units your rack has, and then you can basically click and select various components like your patch boxes, patch panels, switches, etc., etc. In my case, I don't actually have any patch panels, but I might add some in the near future. And if I do add a patch panel, I'm gonna put it right above the patch box itself. But in my case, since this rack is going to be for my test network, I'm putting all of my UniFi test stuff down at the bottom because that's more permanent, and then towards the top I'm going to have open spaces for other test equipment that I might be playing with or testing out at any given moment. So at the very bottom we have our USP RPS, that is the redundant power system for UniFi equipment. Then I have my QNAP NAS. Then we have our UDM Pro, and notice when you select firewall here, or router, it actually shows up as this UDM Pro. So they're kind of using UniFi equipment in their racks, which is pretty great because that happens to be what I'm using here. Then I have a 24-port UniFi switch here. Then I'm putting in the PATCHBOX, and then I have a couple of other switches that are coming soon on the channel, but I don't want to let the cat out of the bag on those yet. This is how I'm going to start, and the reason that I'm doing it this way is so that I can take the PATCHBOX and run cables up and down from kind of a central location. The only change that I'll probably make to this is if I do put in a 24-port Keystone patch panel, I will put it directly above the PATCHBOX and then shift these switches up one rack unit each. Above that, I'm just going to have a shelf, and then towards the top here, I will have a PDU in the back side of the rack. Okay, that's it for now. I'm going to print out a copy of this rack plan so that I can use it as a template when I'm putting all of the equipment into the new rack. But for now, there's a lot of work to be done to get it to the point where I can actually install that PATCHBOX and start using it. So I guess nothing left to do but get started. Alright, so as I feared, I started building this out, and this rack is just too shallow for the PATCHBOX 365. Now this isn't a problem with the PATCHBOX or the rack, they're just incompatible with each other. If you look back here, especially given like the size of the RPS cable that has to be back here, I could probably, like, you see it's very, very close. I need about an extra, like, 1.5 centimeters here. And I do have the space in the back, but it would really leave me with, like, no space back here whatsoever for any of the cables that need to go up and down. So that leaves me two options. Number one, reroute all the cables around this device, or just don't use it at all. So I figure I'm just gonna put it in my other rack that is a lot deeper. The other thing is, notice how these stick out here. Even if I was able to get this on, these might not work with the front of the door right there, right? So these are sticking out sufficiently far enough that I would really have to move these rails back a couple notches for the RJ11 and fiber ends to actually work without them like actually hitting the door here. So we're gonna pull the PATCHBOX out of here, and I will get it set up in my other rack, and we'll do testing of this device over there. Okay, here we have my new rack all reconfigured. I have a completely separate video coming out on migrating from my production rack with test equipment included over to the test rack that I now have on the other side of the office. So make sure you subscribe and click that bell icon so you can be notified when that video releases. As for the PATCHBOX though, it fits perfectly fine in this rack as you can see, but it's also totally overkill. So for one, I don't have any patch panels in here that I'm using to connect this PATCHBOX up to. This is going to work a lot better if you've got like a 24 port patch panel either just directly below or directly above this device, that all of these can be patched into that patch panel, and then the other side of the connection goes out to a switch or whatever equipment you need it to go out to. So here's what I am using it for, however, and I like this a lot. So right here, these four connections right here go to the back of my NAS. So I have that link aggregated across 4 different connections, and I used to have cables that were way too long that went from the switch into the back of the NAS. Now, these 4 cables that go around the side here are perfect length, and there's no extra mess of cable inside this rack. The longest run that I have is up to my Edge Router 4. So you can see this one here. It goes off to the side and then up and then over to the Edge Router 4. This one, however, see this, again, when I say this is overkill for this rack, it's because there's no space for any sort of cable management. You know, the PATCHBOX comes with cable management arms that attach to the side of the rails right here, but with the side of this rack being closed, they just don't fit in here. So I'm gonna be getting a 3D printer soon, and hopefully I can find some sort of solution for 3D printing a smaller cable management arm that just comes straight out like so. In fact, if you guys know of any Thingiverse projects that would just be a small cable management that goes on the side of a 1U rack and doesn't stick out and doesn't, push up against this wall, let me know that down in the comments below. I'm definitely going to be looking to 3D print something like that as one of my first projects when I get that 3D printer. So other than that, I am using this for a couple of Raspberry Pis that I have now moved in here. You can see the bottom ones are going directly into this switch, and then these tops go over to my Home Assistant Raspberry Pi, as well as one of my 2 Pi holes, which is sitting right here. So all of these are unused. However, what I have already found this useful for is like adopting new UniFi equipment. So for instance, if I had a new switch to adopt, I can pop one of these out, take the bottom one, plug it into a switch, take the top one, and then plug it into whatever device I might need to adopt. And that's a nice, super easy, temporary way of getting equipment installed into this rack or adopted without having to go break out more patch cables and have things hanging loose all over the place. All right, so now let's talk about some of the advantages to using the PATCHBOX, because I know that the first question that's going to come up, the first comment that's going to come up is, when you populate this thing out with 24 Cat6a cassettes, the cost is $540 versus the cost of just buying 24 patch cables, right? 24 patch cables is going to be a fraction of the cost of the PATCHBOX. So how do they justify this device and the savings that you might get from it? Well, again, this itself, my example is not great, right? So my example is total overkill for this PATCHBOX, but if you had a large data center rack with numerous patch panels, numerous servers, these savings can come in the amount of time that it takes to trace and connect devices. Now, what do I mean by that? First of all, there are labels that can go inside here, so you can label your PATCHBOX and know exactly where everything goes. Second of all, having everything connected to the PATCHBOX means that if you need to trace cables, you just have to give it a little tug, and you're going to see exactly where that cable goes up and down the rack. The other thing is you're going to save a ton of space in terms of always having the correct size patch cable. Case in point, look at these two Raspberry Pis. This cable here is like a 4-inch cable, and this cable here is like a 6 or 7-inch cable. You don't ever have the exact size that you need when you're dealing with patch cables, but the PATCHBOX always gives you the exact size cable that you need. So the ease at which you can terminate equipment, the ease at which you can locate equipment throughout your rack, as well as the cleanliness of not having the incorrect size patch cables for a number of the things that you need to patch in, all of that is going to equal reduced IT administrative time. And that's where they are justifying the cost of the PATCHBOX. If you have an environment that can really take advantage of these features, unlike my small little test environment here, the amount of time that the PATCHBOX saves you when properly implemented helps the PATCHBOX pay for itself versus the cost of just having patch cables running willy-nilly all over the place. One thing I do want to mention about the PATCHBOX and about the way that it was delivered to me, you saw all of those various boxes, and it created a lot of waste. It created enough waste that I, made a joke about it and posted on Twitter about the aftermath of the unboxing of this PATCHBOX. Well, PATCHBOX actually saw that tweet and they said, wait a minute, something's wrong. Turns out they ordered it improperly when they were going to send it to me. You're not supposed to get every single cassette in its own separate box. That was a mistake. When you order a PATCHBOX, it comes pre-configured with everything that you've ordered already assembled, and it comes just in a single box. So as much cardboard waste as you saw in this video, that's actually not the way that it typically comes delivered, and I'm really, really glad that they cleared that up, because that was a lot of cardboard boxes to go through. But I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think about the PATCHBOX? Is this something that you would consider implementing in your own data center network? If so, what size of network do you think this is actually appropriate for? Put all of that down in the comments below. I try to read every single comment that comes in onto the channel, and I will respond to all of the ones that I can get to. All right, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please click subscribe. Also, subscribe for our PATCHBOX giveaway that we're going to be doing sometime in the next couple of months or so. All right, we will see you guys in the next video.